everyone. Thanks for joining us for another edition of Texas Insider TV, brought to you by the Texas Alliance of Energy Producers. I'm Jim Cardle. Millennial bashing has become a bit of a sport in today's news media, but yet they control a great amount of economic power and political power. Allie Stuckey has recently joined The Blaze out of Dallas and is known as the conservative millennial. How will millennials impact the future? What do they care about abortion, the bathroom bill, and political correctness? We're pleased to be able to visit today with the conservative millennial and Blaze contributor, Allie Stuckey. Well, Allie Stuckey with The Blaze, we appreciate you coming in. Thanks for joining us today.
Of course, thanks for having me.
The conservative millennial is your latest bombshell, so to speak, which you've been referred to as, and congratulations on your new gig with The Blaze and all the
Thank you.
BBC and Fox News work that you're doing. But let's just jump right into it. I know you got a tight schedule. Millennials have been a dead horse to be kicked lately, it seems like.
Yes, you're right.
Bashing has become a sport. Mm-hmm. Is it justified in your opinion? And if so, what do you think has led to it?
Certainly some of it is justified. Probably the biggest criticism that you hear of millennials is that we are entitled. And I think that's true. For example, if you look at how many young people voted for Bernie Sanders in the primaries, he actually received more votes from people under 30 than Trump and Clinton did combined. And one of the things that he promised, in addition to free healthcare, was free college. That's an idea that really appeals to millennials, because we did not grow up the way our parents did in the spirit of hard work and entrepreneurship in quite the same way. Our parents' parents went through the Great Depression. They were born into war. And so they have a very different outlook on the world. They're much tougher. They're much less entitled. We grew up in a little bit more of a sphere of privilege, and because of that, this idea of paying our dues and working hard before we receive a reward is almost foreign to a lot of millennials. So in that sense, I do think it's a little justified. However, what I will say is that it's not all of our fault. We were raised by someone. We were raised by baby boomers, and we were raised in a culture in which we thought that everyone got a trophy, and we were told you can do whatever you want to do, which is true. You can do whatever you want to do. But I think we were also raised in a sense thinking that we were very special and that we deserved things. Our parents did teach us that. Not every parent, certainly, but in general, our parents probably taught us that more than their parents taught them that. So it's not all of our faults. And we also are blamed for being glued to technology. Now, that's true, but my counter to that is that if the generation before us had the same technology that we had, there's no statistics that say they would be more disciplined. They would be just as glued to their iPhone if they had their iPhone. So I think there's some of it that's justified, and some of it I think we need a little bit more fairness.
You mentioned that Bernie Sanders got more votes than Hillary and Donald Trump combined. I want to delve into that a little bit. Talk about the Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump phenomenon. You've got folks on the socialist side of the left, Bernie Sanders. You've got the Tea Party folks on the right.
Right.
Do millennials care about those types of things, or what got them engaged this last election?
Yeah, well, Bernie Sanders appealed to them not just with the promise of free college, but he also came in as an independent, this anti-establishment guy, or he said that he was. Anti-Washington, even though he's pro-big government, kind of anti-Washington, this iconoclast almost. Millennials really appeal to that kind of attitude that, yeah, we're going to bust up the norm and the status quo. This whole capitalism thing isn't working out very well. Let's do something radical and different. Let's help everyone. And that's the kind of guy that Bernie Sanders purports to be. Now, it's not true. He has 3 houses. He's benefiting from capitalism just as much as the next guy, just as much as Donald Trump has. But millennials buy into that message. We are suckers for words like compassion, empathy, help the common man. And Republicans, to their detriment, are not as good at messaging as the Democrats are and as the left is. Bernie Sanders, as kooky as he is, he's good at messaging. He knew what to say. He knew how to use those words like empathy, compassion, love, tolerance. What we know is that many of those words are hollow, but most millennials didn't realize that. And they bought into this lie that we see perpetuated in places like Venezuela, that we saw perpetuated in the Soviet Union, that we see perpetuated in North Korea, that socialism works and that it helps poor people, that everyone will be happy, and that we'll be in this utopia if we could just have a socialistic society, if the state could control the means of production. No. And the common misconception that millennials have in that is that socialism works. It does not work. It doesn't work. All you have to do is look at those regimes and look at the happiness of the people in Venezuela or North Korea to see that it doesn't actually work. A free market economy is actually the most compassionate thing, because the most compassionate thing you can do is to start a business and employ people and give them a way of actually earning their own keep. That's what people want. No one wants to live off of welfare, essentially, in their heart of hearts. And that's something I think that Republicans and libertarians and the right need to get better at communicating to millennials, that conservatism is actually more compassionate.
You mentioned a couple things there, traditional American institution type beliefs. But when you mentioned Bernie Sanders, and this interesting came to my mind, you said the man is good at, or the guy's good at. That reminded me of another subject that you've talked about. Do millennial women, like weak men, talk about the issue of boys not being taught to be men anymore?
Yes, that's a big problem, and it's propelled by third-wave feminists, who I think a huge cause that they seem to rally around, maybe it's subconsciously, is the emasculation of men. They have coined this term toxic masculinity, that being born a male or being a male in any way, whether that's aggressive or athletic, whatever it is, they have demonized to be inherently wrong. And they have shamed men away from being men to be more fluid. It ties into this whole idea that there aren't really two genders, that everyone's everyone, no one's no one, and we're just this amorphous blob of nothingness. It doesn't make any logical sense. But they have shamed men away from actually being men. And unfortunately, there are still strong women out there like myself. Now, thankfully, I'm married to a strong man. There are strong women out there like myself who want other strong men. Mm-hmm. And if all of the strong men are gone, what are we going to do? What are we going to do?
A couple quick questions I want to throw out at you. Again, folks, thanks for joining us for this edition of the Texas Insider TV, brought to you by the Texas Alliance of Energy Producers. Let me just throw out a couple subjects, Allie, get your quick response. Something here in Texas that's very prevalent: immigration reform and racism. What do millennials think?
Immigration reform and racism. Well, the worst thing you can be if you are a millennial is a racist. And unfortunately, an attack that I've received is if I'm against illegal immigration, which everyone should be, is that I'm a racist. That it's racist, anti-Mexican, they say brown people, a white supremacist. If you don't believe that illegal immigrants should just be able to come in without any reprimand or without being deported. And they're unable to separate their emotions of the issue from the facts of the issue. They forget about the millions and millions of people that are trying to come into our country legally. They forget about the millions and millions of people who are trying to find a job here but can't, because we have 8 million people, 8 million illegal immigrants that make up for the U.S. workforce right now. Mm-hmm. Those are 8 million jobs that Americans could have, that legal Americans could have. Where's the compassion for those people? Where's the compassion for the immigrants that are trying to get in here legally? That's not compassion to me. That is illogic. And that, to me, is where the left and many millennials are having a hard time reconciling those two things.
How about the issue, the word abortion, pro-choice, pro-life? Millennials' thoughts?
Yes. Unfortunately, I think probably, I don't know the exact statistic, but the majority of millennial women especially believe that abortion is a form of empowerment rather than what it is, which is murder. However, I do think I see and feel an opportunity there among women who are the in-between. I really believe that there are thousands, if not millions, of women who are in between on the issue and don't really know. Because in the one sense, they want to feel like, okay, a woman should have control of her body. I get that. But then you have the other side, the very real side, but wait, that's a baby. And so we have this mass of women in between that I personally am trying to reach by showing the compassion and the realness of human life inside a woman's body. That sure, it's your body, your choice, but when there's another body that's involved, that's a completely different conversation. That's a difficult and very contentious issue for millennials, especially millennial women. But I do feel like there's an opportunity for a sway towards life.
One final question. The state legislature is working on something called the privacy bill,
yes,
better known as the bathroom bill. I know you're in Texas, but you have exposure nationwide. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think the transgender issue in general is a very hot button issue for millennials, especially in light of what President Trump just did on Twitter, saying that transgender people won't be able to serve in the military. It's something that a lot of millennials are talking about right now. And what I try to remind people, no matter where you fall, whether you're on the right or on the left for any issue, but especially an issue like this, is that you have to remember that these people are people. I think conservatives, they forget when they talk about an issue like transgenderism or something else that these are still people. You might fall on one side of the spectrum ideologically or politically, but we are talking about people. Now, I personally believe that there is a way to protect people's privacy, and there is a way to make sure that we are keeping our military safe. I actually agree with Trump's decision. I agree with this privacy bill, and still have a compassionate conversation about it. We're not forgetting that these people are just people, or actually people. For example, I actually talked to a transgender Trump supporter. I had an interview with her a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was last week, after Trump announced his ban on transgender people serving, and she absolutely agreed with it. She said, really? As a transgender person, we are medically reliant. That's just the truth. We're no better than asthmatics. We're no better than people with diabetes. And so if we can have more voices like that, like I said, are remembering the human side of it while also remembering the logical side of it, then I think we can have productive conversations about things as contentious as the bathroom bill.
And what can we see from you or expect from you the rest of the year on the Blaze?
Well, there are some exciting projects happening at the Blaze, and so you can just stay tuned for that. You can go to theblaze.com/Allie. That's where all of my stuff is. And then you can also find me on Facebook, the Conservative Millennial blog. And so all of my stuff that I ever do can be found at those two places, and I hope everyone will follow along.
Well, we hope you'll come back. Sure appreciate
yes.
you coming in. I know you got an airplane to catch.
Thank you so much for having me. It was fun.
Folks, we want to thank you for joining us on this edition of Texas Insider Television, brought to you by the Alliance of Energy Producers. I'm Jim Cardle. Remember, you're either an insider or you're not. And thanks to Allie Stuckey for coming by today.